Hello everyone, my name is Maria Sanz and I'm a PhD student in Universitat Jaume I. My presentation today is entitled Art, Feminism and Metaphors, a metaphorical analysis of women's empowerment in current feminist works. So the aim of this research is to analyze visual metaphors in artworks, especially illustrations. Therefore, first and foremost, it is important to give a brief overview of the key concepts that shape this study. Those are feminism, art, and metaphors, and we are going to develop some key ideas related to those. To begin with, we are going to talk about feminism. We should say that feminism, as we know, has evolved through different historical periods and has been classified into different waves, each focusing on distinct but related goals. We've got the first wave in the late 19th century and early 20th centuries, which was also called women's rights movement, and it focused on women's suffrage and legal rights, such as education or the right to vote. Second wave during the 1960s and the 1980s concentrated on issues such as sexuality, family, or workplace equality. Then came the third wave around the 1990s and early 2000s, which emphasized on diversity and intersectionality. And finally, we can also mention the fourth wave, emerging in the 2010, focusing on digital activism and social media visibility. Central points of these waves were always attaining equality and ensuring that women's voices were represented and also represented in arts. For that, we should talk about art. We also face a complex and evolving concept, and it is important to highlight that art is inherently subjective and it varies across time, cultures, or individuals. Traditionally, we all know that definitions of art were dominated by male perspectives, but in any case, it is a fact that art is an act of communication and knowledge. Therefore, art not only uses material and mental processes to attain an impact, but it's also considered to be an instrument of knowledge and fully developed in a social context, following social structures and institutions. So, since art is a way of constructing meaning, we should narrow this vision and talk very briefly about what is feminist art. We are going to share some features, some characteristics that are common. So, usually, these common features in feminist art is that it is usually political and it deals with gender related questions. Furthermore, it is autobiographical and it's an exploration of the self, focuses on the female experience. Generally, it questions stereotypes, creates narratives, and usually made by women, of course. And the use of different expressive codes is very important, such as performances or installations. And of course, we have realized that a lot of these artworks share recurrent topics or tropes that have a unique imagery. So now we are going to see after that with these illustrators these type of characteristics that we can find in these illustrations. Now, to continue with, we are going to talk about metaphors, and it is crucial to remember what we first said about art, converging with what people traditionally thought about metaphors, right? Because they were viewed as mere linguistic ornaments or as something poetic or decorative. Nevertheless, in the 1980s, research by Lakoff and Johnson showed that metaphors were a fundamental part of thought and understanding. Then created the conceptual metaphor theory, where they actually developed this theory expressing that metaphors are linked to reasoning. That means that the use of metaphors is essential to our ordinary conceptualization and our thought. And other authors, such as Gibbs, related metaphors to mental mapping, influencing our imagination. So, from all these theories, we could also develop the idea that metaphors not only are found in language, but also in music and pictures. And from there, Forsbill developed the concept of visual or pictorial metaphor. In any case, metaphors are powerful tools to express nowadays ideology, and they can have a strong influence on social and gender perception. And as many scholars have argued, not only metaphors express cultural beliefs, but they have a potential to transform them. And metaphors can function as a tool to challenge traditional items and thoughts of femininity. So, feminist metaphors used in language or art can help women design their own identities. And so, these artists that we have tried to analyze their artworks. They all have been born in Spain within the 21st century. They should have developed their art in the last decades. They should create feminist art and portray female characters. And the topics that they deal with are related to women. Now we're going to talk about these two artists that we have chosen to analyze their artworks and metaphors. The method we have used to analyze these metaphors is called BISMIP, which is Visual Metaphor Identification Procedure, and it focuses on identifying visual units with metaphorical use in still images, such as this illustration. So we are going to define visual meaning and find some incongruencies in these images, identifying their metaphorically used visual units. In this case, we can see these. So, as we have previously said, we use the procedure BISMIP in order to identify these incongruous elements. The first step is to describe the image where we can see a girl who is knitting a heart with red thread. So, in this case, we can see that two elements from different domains are used in this very same image, which is this red thread. And instead of knitting a jumper, for instance, the girl is knitting a heart. We can see that there is a mixture, there's an incongruency in these two different elements. So the topic, of course, at the end comes to be metaphorical. The topic could be that the high expectations and hopes for women, right? She is creating or knitting her own future, something that the girl would really enjoy doing for herself. So the element of the heart could symbolize self love. And in this case, we can say that yes, there is a metaphor. And of course, this metaphor putting together these two different elements. And the incongruency is creating this metaphorical visual unit. Here we have some more time in order to observe all these elements. Now we're going to continue with another work. This one is entitled Your Enemy Here, and it also contains incongruous elements. As we can see, there's a brain inside a blender, which is a kitchen appliance. And usually, inside the blender, we should find food, right? And it's an appliance that is used to crush food. So in this case, the brain inside the blender saying with the label saying your enemy here makes us deduce that the topic could be self-sabotage or self-criticism, and again also the release of social inflicted pressure, mixing the element of the brain which should be inside the body and the blender makes us think that of course there is a metaphor in this image. In the next image, we are going to see also a very recurrent topic, which is empowerment. We can see a plaster with the word power written on it, and then a tube coming from her eyes, where she's crying, and the tears are, she's actually being fed her own tears, which makes us think that this power comes from her own suffering, and being vulnerable can sometimes makes us be empowered and make us overcome situations. The next emergent artist that we are going to work with is Osgat. In this case, we also have a metaphor here. We've got a woman, the face of a woman in this image. Todo lo bueno que tienes dentro sale afuera. And the idea of nature is also in many occasions related with these topics in feminist art. In this case, growing these flowers out of her ears means that, well, we're talking about personal growth. So there is this incongruent element, which is, well, which are the flowers. And the metaphorical meaning could be related to the topic of personal growth or strength, personal evolution. And the idea of nature is also related to this evolution and growing. And this is a metaphor that we can find in different shapes, also using different elements in other artworks by different artists and also by the same artist. We can also see here a woman using a wind-up toy, and this could symbolize also when we are running out of battery. We keep winding up our life, right? We can keep getting strength. We need to overcome obstacles, and we just need to wind things up, right? We need to find strength to keep track of things, to keep track of our lives. And again, the element of the heart is an element used in different illustrations, such as in this one. But in here, we could read Preparada para lo que venga, and here the heart has taken the idea of a shield, right? And sometimes it's our own self love that, or self power, that makes us overcome these difficult situations that we have in life. So, in order to sum up all these ideas that we have very quickly mentioned, we can see that there are different recurrent topics, which are women's rights and equality, power, women's identity, empowerment, body and menstruation, self love or self esteem, and also self pleasure. Those are tropes that are most likely found in feminist art. It is very important to analyze these images and know what these artists want to send, the message that they want to send. So to finish with, we should say that it is very important to raise voice to illustrators here. And again, it's very important to tackle these topics to analyze what they are talking about and what they're sharing on different platforms, because those are topics that we're approached by mainly by men in different periods and also by different means and differently. So thank you for your attention. I hope that I explained myself through this presentation and that you enjoyed all the information that I provided. Thank you so much.